Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with how to cut Hasselback potatoes. That's right, there are hundreds of different Hasselback potato recipes, but every one of them has something in common, and that is we need to be able to slice the potatoes in a very specific manner. And besides learning a very valuable technique, I'm also going to show you a little bit of an experiment I did, plus one of the worst examples of potato oxidation I've ever encountered in my career. But we'll get to that. For now, let me show you the actual valuable part of this video, which is the knife work. And to get started, the first thing we'll need is enough of the right kind of potato, which I recommend should be russet. And besides getting enough to fit whatever you're going to cook these in, we also want to make sure these are about the same size, since we're basically going to cook them whole, and we want them to cook evenly. So what we'll do is peel those and keep them in a bowl of cold fresh water. And then for this method, besides a cutting board and knife, we are going to need a pair of wooden chopsticks, which you probably have in a drawer somewhere, but if you don't, I just gave you the perfect excuse to order takeout. And the first thing we'll do is cut a small slice off the side of the potato, which I like to do on the narrow side, so the potato sits up as high as possible. And we'll trim that little bit off, so our potato stays in place as we cut. And the reason we have our potato between the chopsticks is because to prep a Hasselback potato, we need to slice down every 1/8 to 1/4 inch, almost but not quite all the way through. And by using the chopsticks, it is physically impossible to cut all the way through the bottom of the potato. And yes, instead of chopsticks, you could use a couple wooden spoon handles. Or if times are really tough, you can go out into the woods and grab a couple sticks. But no matter what you use, this is pretty much a foolproof system. And of course, as we do these and finish them, we're going to put them back in that cold water so the potatoes don't oxidize and turn brown, he said, foreshadowing an upcoming scene. Okay, so that's a great tip for how to do these without cutting all the way through. But here's another tip for getting those slices the same distance apart, which is based on the fact that it's easier to move your finger than a knife. And since, as usual, we're using that knuckle to guide the knife, if I move my finger across the potato the same distance every time, and my knife stays against that knuckle, then theoretically, every one of these cuts is going to be the same distance apart. So a cut is made, the finger moves, and the knife follows. And by the way, don't overthink this. Okay, your hands know what to do. All right, do you think a great dancer is actually thinking of where to put their feet? No, they just let it happen. Okay, it's people like us that think about where to put our feet when we dance, which is why we look like that in all those wedding videos. But anyway, the point is trust your motor skills and just let it happen. And that, my friends, pretty much concludes the useful part of this video. And once your potatoes are cut, you can proceed with any one of those hundreds of different Hasselback potato recipes I mentioned earlier, most of which involve draining these and then slathering them in fat and seasoning them and then roasting them nice and brown and crisp. So that's what I started to do. And I went ahead and generously greased my pan with duck fat, although pretty much any other animal fat will work, including butter. And after fatting the pan, I went ahead and laid in the potatoes, at which point I decided to try an experiment. Okay, instead of simply seasoning these and roasting them, I decided I was going to partially cook these first, and then refrigerate them, and then roast them. Since it's a proven scientific fact that if you cook a potato and let it cool, and then cook it again, it will always, every time, be crispier, which is of course the secret behind every great French fry you've ever had. So my plan was to pour about a cup of water in this, along with a generous amount of salt, and I would bring this to a boil and then cover it, and let these potatoes steam for about 7 minutes or so, or until I thought the surface of the potatoes were just starting to soften up. Oh, and please note before the lid goes on, how these potatoes don't have any dark spots and are pretty much unblemished, because they certainly did not stay like that. But anyway, like I said, I covered these and cooked them for about 7 minutes, at which point I uncovered them. But I continued to let them cook over medium-high heat for a few more minutes so as to reduce a little more of that liquid. And while that was happening, one of the ends of the potatoes fell off, which reminds me to tell you, do not cut too close to the ends. Okay, even if you don't cut all the way through, some of that potato might fall off. But if it does, just put it back where it was and use another potato to hold it in place, and no one will ever know what happened. So I fixed that situation, and like I said, I let a little more of that water evaporate out, at which point I turned off the heat. And while still warm, I decided to brush these with some more duck fat. And as I was doing that, I noticed I had a major situation with the appearance. Right, suddenly, out of nowhere, I had brown spots, and the surface of some of the potatoes was turning brown and looking weird, and I became disappointed and confused, since that wasn't supposed to happen, and I've done similar things before and it hasn't happened. But anyway, I let those cool, and I wrapped them up and popped them in the fridge until fully chilled, and I hoped for the best, but expected the worst, which is exactly what I got when I pulled them out of the fridge and unwrapped them, since they looked even worse and borderline unusable. And I was just about to compost these and start over. But then I remembered I'm a man of science, and also a man of not wanting to go back outside to buy more potatoes. So I decided to press on and cook these, just in case this ever happens to you. And I went ahead and tossed some fresh thyme into the pan, along with some whole garlic cloves. And I also applied some more duck fat over the top, as well as another generous sprinkling of salt. And by the way, no, I don't open every slice up and place fat and seasoning inside, which if you have the time and patience for, feel free to do. But generally the slices open up as these roast, and if you simply baste them a few times while they're cooking, you can pretty much achieve the same result. But anyway, up to you. I mean, you guys are after all the Swedes of your Hasselback potato needs. Which reminds me, these were invented in Stockholm in the 1940s, which is good to know, just in case you ever find yourself on a potato-related trivia game show. But anyway, after I flavored, lubricated, and seasoned, I went ahead and popped these in a 425-degree oven, and I roasted them for about an hour, at which point they looked like this, which I have to admit was not as bad as I thought they would look. And then to shine up the tops, I went ahead and gave them a little basting with the fat in the pan, which again, no matter what recipe you're using, you should definitely do 2 or 3 times while these roast. And then after brushing that delicious thyme and garlic scented duck fat over the top, I tossed in a little fresh thyme for the contractually obligated pictures. And then I grabbed a fork so you could hear just how crispy these got. Oh yeah, fork don't lie. And above and beyond the Hasselback potato's unique appearance, it's that amazing contrast between that crispy, crusty exterior and that beautiful, creamy, fluffy center that just makes these things so much fun to eat. And yes, many versions of this recipe call for adding stock to the pan, but as I said earlier, to get the crispiest potato possible, it has to be pre-cooked and then chilled, which gelatinizes the starch, and then roasted to get that maximum crispiness. So despite the challenges, I was able to enjoy this, especially with a little bit of roasted garlic, which is always nice. And I know a workman's not supposed to blame his tools, but these are not tools, these are potatoes, and I'm going to blame them. Because I really do think it was the potato that caused the discoloration. But having said that, I will be looking at the comments, just in case somebody points out something I did that might have caused these issues. But like I said, unless I hear something convincing, I'm going with definitely it was the potato's fault. But anyway, that's it. How to cut Hasselback potatoes. No matter what recipe you follow, or whether you decide to pre-cook these or not, I think we showed a really good and easy way to cut these. And I really do hope you give it a try soon. So please follow the links below, even though there's not going to be any ingredient amounts, but there will be more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.